Good evening. It is Tuesday, the 19th of September, 2023. It is coming up to 8:30 p.m. UK time. This is part of my journey, episode 37. And in this show, I have a very special guest. His name's Jeordie Shenton. He's the Tonic Rider mental health charity coordinator. We've met recently at the Brighton Music Conference, having sort of had a video call initially when I did some courses with Tonic. And we thought it'd be a good idea to come on, explain what Tonic does, and also discuss various areas of mental health in the music industry. So without further ado, we have Jeordie.
Hello.
How you doing?
Thank you for having us on.
No, thank you. Like I was saying, I think I first came across Tonic. We had Riccio Suzuki, who's a DJ, and he came on the show. And before he came on the show, I was sort of looking into what he'd been up to recently. And one of the things was he was doing some sort of event that was sponsored or raising funds for Tonic. And so I was like, oh, okay, that looks interesting. Looked into Tonic, found out more about you and what you were doing, and then signed up for some courses. We had a little video call and then did the courses, and it was great. And yeah, and so here we are.
Yeah.
Definitely.
6 months later. Do you know what I
mean? It's the way it goes sometimes. You know, you sort of reach out and arrange these things, but it's happening, which is the main thing. But right, we've got quite a lot of areas to sort of discuss. But let's start maybe with you. Obviously, normally I ask my guests how they got into music or DJing or whatever, but you know, tell us a little bit about you. You know, what were you into when you were younger, and sort of up to present day, and then we'll talk about Tonic, etc. from there.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm the coordinator of the Tonic Rider program, which I've been working in for 2.5 years now. And the way I got into that was literally through my academic work. So alongside that, I'm a PhD researcher of substance use amongst working musicians, and that emerged from just being a music fan. So I've really come in through the back door into this role because I'm a huge music fan. And when I was at university, you know, you have to do some research, you have to do a dissertation project. And it just occurred to me through the passing of Scott Whelan from Stone Temple Pilots that a lot of people who benefit my mental health through their music, they tend to experience poor mental health. And sometimes that leads to really quite tragic outcomes. So I wondered why. And that led into me doing research as part of my dissertation, which fast forward a few years led into me doing my PhD. And then by chance, complete chance, I emailed Tonic Music for Mental Health, not knowing about the Tonic Rider program at that point, just to ask if I can put him on my questionnaire as a debrief. And luckily for me, Steph, who is the founder and CEO, Steph Langen, asked to meet me. And then from that, I landed on the dream job of coordinating and finding out first and foremost about the Tonic Rider program.
Wow. Right, quite a lot to sort of pack into that.
Yeah.
But obviously you got in touch with Tonic first. So why did you do that? What was it that drew you initially to go to that?
Well, it really was. It was a most random thing. So just looking about, you know, charities, organizations that work around music and mental health, and I learned about Tonic's initial project, which is recovery through music. So using music workshops for the benefit of mental health in the community, and in some cases, recovery from mental illness. Noticed they did a lot of work with musicians, just sent an email out saying I'd be interested to find out more. Just so happened they were launching a program specifically for musicians and people working in the music industry. And yeah, it just led from there, just one of them really amazing things. And I was really inspired by Steph's vision for the project of Tonic Rider, because it's a big task to work in mental health in the music industry. There's a lot of things that needs covered. And Steph just outlined the idea of the peer support groups and the training courses and what the plans were. And I thought it was amazing. And so got involved and then eventually started working at Tonic.
And did you come in as coordinator of the Tonic Rider program? Was that you're in, or did you move up to that role?
No, I was originally a volunteer, like for a short
Okay.
time. I originally just volunteered my time to do some research, which we're now going to probably start doing this year now, and also to help set up the system, so the registration system. So it's really, it seems quite random, but and just from that, there was a coordinator was needed, so I applied for the role, and then got the role. And it's just been a fantastic learning experience for me because still being sort of not necessarily new to the sort of mental health field, but it was a different type of work for me personally, and it's a pleasure because we've got a fantastic team. The rest of the team so the team of facilitators are all mental health professionals from the music industry. So it's really amazing to work with such a great team who are all passionate about this topic.
So are these people who were in the music industry and went on to become mental health professionals?
Yes, so there are people who are still in the music industry and
Yeah.
are mental health professionals. So our peer support groups are supervised and facilitated by Adam Firecheck. So Adam is the drummer from Baby Shambles. He's a DJ. He's a music teacher. He's also a qualified psychotherapist. So he facilitates our peer support groups. My colleague Jade, she's a trainee psychotherapist. So she's also a qualified mental health first aid instructor, a suicide first aid tutor. And she's also a classic trained singer, punk singer, works in music. So we've got facilitators such as those. And that's the amazing thing about the program is you have both that dual aspect of mental health professionals and people who are experienced within the music industry.
And that's got to be the best way forward, isn't it? Because, if you're experiencing yourself, and I imagine over the years they've experienced a lot of these mental health issues, you're someone who can be trusted to speak about them and to give
Absolutely.
advice and therapy to other people who are going through what you've been through, rather than it being something that you don't know much about. So that link has to be very important, I would guess.
Absolutely. I mean, so with Tonic Rider, the aim of Tonic Rider is to promote good mental health in the music industry. And some people have questioned why the music industry, why is the music industry special? And it's about looking at it like this. The music industry is unique in terms of the stresses that are encountered. So the 24/7 culture, the performance anxiety, the fact that for a lot of musicians and for a lot of artists, they're both producing a piece of work and then performing a piece of work. You've got the digital burnout, you've got the touring, then you've got the sort of the impact it has on identity. And I always use the example of builders. I don't think there's many builders that look at a building they've worked on and it resonates with their identity. But for musicians, it resonates with identity. For crew, it resonates with identity, the touring aspect, touring families. So that's why the music industry is unique and requires that bespoke mental health work. And so, having the professionals on board, there's a greater empathy because sometimes in the more general mental health world, there can be a lack of empathy through no fault of anyone, but it's very difficult to empathize what it's like to work in the music industry without sort of having that core experience. And I said it was someone who's from outside the industry, but knowing that we have a team who are from the music industry and that understanding and to go, of course, this is what happens because you can't be, say, a DJ, for example, and you're struggling with your mental health, and then someone turns around and say, well, perhaps you should maybe get a good night's sleep, go to bed at 9 o'clock. It's just not going to happen, is it?
Yeah. And especially the younger DJs who are coming up now, and especially in this constant social media world where you're constantly seeing your favorite DJs doing this gig and that gig in front of, it's that pressure to, well, if I stop, someone else is going to get better than me, or I'm never going to get to that. There's a lot of that. I'm thankful that where I am, I'm the other side of that sort of DJ world, and my DJ career is very different to what's coming up. But that brings with it all sorts of problems, doesn't it? In terms of I've got to keep going, and then that you've already sort of alluded to it, like sort of substance misuse and things like that. To sort of well, I've got to be on something if I'm going to be DJing in these clubs, and I've got to stay up all these hours. And like you say, there isn't a lot of empathy to say, just take a break, get some sleep, eat healthily, all of that. That just doesn't really exist, does it, when you're sort of a performer or a creative up and coming? And that's a lot of pressure.
The competition aspect, and it's a different sort of notion of competition, because it's, again, I use an example of builders. Yeah, your competition is fellow building companies, fellow builders. But with music industry, that resonates across all the job roles. So if you're an artist, if I don't do this tour, there's another artist who will overtake me. If you're a crew member, if I'm not sort of making sure I can get through this tour or this work, there's another crew member who can take over, another roadie who can replace me. Managers, if I can't manage this band because I'm struggling, there's another manager that can then manage this band. Venue personnel, promoters, all these roles in the music industry where it's like, if I'm not on top of my game, there's someone in the background who can take my place. And when it comes to mental health, this is a real big problem, because it's almost like a self-stigma. I think we're starting to get better in terms of not stigmatizing others. We're learning a little bit from it, but it is a difficult thing, because it is a very cutthroat industry. It's a very fast-pacing industry. It's a very precarious industry. So it's no question that everyone who works in it may be susceptible, or is susceptible, to actually work overload, burnout, and just pushing their boundaries too much with regards to mental health.
Yeah, and that's when they need the support, really. And obviously we'll come to sort of festivals and tours and stuff later. But obviously, tell us a little bit about the program.
So the Tonic Rider program, as I mentioned earlier, has the aim of promoting good mental health in the music industry. The idea of it is to provide free and low-cost training support that is bespoke to the music industry. So for artists, for crew, for managers, venue personnel, promoters. So at the core of the program is the program itself. So on that, we offer peer support groups, which are funded by Help Musicians, facilitated by Adam Fajcek. And these are like open spaces for music professionals to come together across 6 weeks, attending 6 sessions, talk about mental health, talk about the music industry with like-minded people. So that empathy is there, both for the facilitator and the fellow participants. So we have that aspect there. And the strongest thing with that, they're all delivered through Zoom. So that means it's not just London-centric or Manchester-centric. It's accessible to anyone in the music industry based in the UK, and they can be, say, from the Isle of Wight up to the sort of the islands at the top of Scotland.
And also at any point, they obviously it's a set time, they can fit it into their schedule, even if they're on tour or wherever they are, because it's Zoom, they don't physically have to be there. And so how long have you been running those peer support groups?
So the Tonic Rider program has been running for 2.5 years. So it launched in January 2021, and then the first peer support group was run in March 2021. It was an open music industry professional group. Adam facilitated it, and then since then we've run at least 6 a year. So actually 6 open groups, and then sometimes we do themed groups as well. So we're heading into around 25 we've delivered now. And another strength to Tonic is the fact that it's not just the case that Tonic was founded in 2021. Tonic Music for Mental Health, the charity, was founded in 2012 by Steph Langen, and become a charity in 2019. But before that was doing more CIC work, more non-profit work. And as I mentioned, it was based around music workshops, which has then led into okay, we use music as a recovery tool, but what about supporting the industry itself? Yeah,
great. And you mentioned that obviously the program, there's 2 parts. There's the peer support and then there's training courses. So you've explained about the peer support. The training courses is I think what I did, which was the sort of suicide first aid light, and I think it's a mental health awareness course. So tell us a little bit about those different courses that you offer.
Yeah. So our 2 main training courses are fully accredited. So we have the mental health first aid course, which is the fully accredited Mental Health First Aid England course. We're lucky enough to have Jade on our team who is qualified to deliver that training. So it's all in-house, and it's attended only by music professionals, so musicians, crew. And the benefit of that is it's the same mental health first aid course as what's out there generally, for completely the same content. But because everyone who attends and a facilitator is from the music industry, the case studies and the conversations do then naturally tend to revolve around working in the music industry. So we deliver that course with the idea of the support element allows music professionals to support themselves. The mental health first aid is about supporting colleagues and the wider music industry, and also people outside the music industry as well, like family, friends, people going about daily life. And then the extension of that is the Suicide First Aid Light, which is assured by Suicide First Aid UK and the City and Guilds. And this is a training course where it's around not just how to support someone experiencing a crisis with regards to mental health, but with this, it's about supporting someone who's experiencing suicide ideation, possibly plans or even attempts to take their own life. And that's really important because we know that in the music industry, there is a high rate of suicide, not just with artists, but also with crew, managers, promoters. It seems, the artist is the tip of the iceberg, what we are aware of, but actually underneath, it's more endemic in terms of suicide and also suicide ideation. And we know within specifically the dance music world, the recent losses of Keith Flint and Avicii, to name a few. It's really important, and it's really important to have those conversations. So that's why we offered a Suicide First Aid Light as well.
Well, they're both great courses, and obviously I've done both of them. They were free, and I think they still are. If people
so they're low cost now. So what we do in terms of the cost, so we pay half the fee for everyone who attends the course. So for mental health first aid, it's usually £325, but we only charge £160. But we do also offer a full concession place. So for anyone in the music industry who cannot afford it, we do offer free places on both those courses.
Great. That's great. The thing is that they're very different courses as well. And I'm glad that I did both. The Suicide First Aid Light was a much heavier course because obviously we're dealing with serious issues in the mental health one as well. But this is quite a unique thing, and I think if you ask anyone, they know someone either personally or in the music industry who has unfortunately taken their own life. So it's getting you to think of those thoughts and sort of remember what was going on, and I guess the problem when it happens is you're always thinking, oh, did I miss something? Is there a sign? Have I, could I have done anything? And I think there's always that sort of level of that. And I think this was dealing with, right, these are the sorts of signs you should be looking for. And these are the sort of, situations that might give rise to this. So I found that a very helpful course. And I think it's great that you run it for those very reasons. Do you find that it's helped other people in a similar way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really good point where you mentioned about the Suicide First Aid Light course. It really is quite, because I don't want to say puts you on the spot, but you have to talk to the tutor in like a role play, and everyone has to do that as part of the course. And I think that's really great because it's like, it's not just a case of doing a course, you go away, you got your certificate. It's kind of putting you in that moment of, okay, now you're going to use the skills we've just taught you. And it's difficult, no doubt, absolutely it's difficult. I've done the course, it is difficult, but I think it's really important because the benefit of it, I mean, we know, as we mentioned, the music industry can be quite isolating. It can be a really difficult place, especially on tour, especially when it's like that 24/7 culture. So it's really important we know how to hold those conversations, and we see the benefit where it's almost like a ripple effect. And we say about suicide itself has a ripple effect where when someone does die by suicide, the effect it has on the close family, then the colleagues, people that are known, people in the general community, roughly there's around 150 people who are affected by one suicide. So the Suicide First Aid Light training also has a ripple effect because it's like someone attends, but then the benefit of those skills. So just being able to utilize those skills, raising awareness around suicide prevention, people learning about the course has that ripple effect as well. And it's really important that, we're not just artists, but there's at least one person in every touring crew, at least one person in every venue, at least one person in every recording studio who has skills in mental health first aid and suicide first aid, because we never know when there's times of crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, you know, it was a really good course, heavy, but it still felt that it was extremely useful and helpful. And even at the end, you know, we'd obviously all gone into a place where we've been thinking about these things and quite heavy. And the person running the show, I can't remember, I think it was Jade, basically just checked that we were all okay. And that, you know, if we needed after the training, would we have someone to go and talk to? So again, that was important, thinking, right, okay, yeah, okay, it is going to affect me. And the brain's a funny thing, isn't it? You know, you think about something now, you go off and do something else, and then your brain sort of processing it in the background, and then it suddenly comes out when you least expect it, you know, and that's a lot of triggering. And I think in the music industry, people sort of push that away because there's always something to do. So they're always pushing their problems further forward. Okay, so that's the sort of training side of it. The other half is sort of resources, isn't it? So tell us about a few of the resources, and then we'll talk about each one individually.
Yeah, so we're really proud of our resources. So this year we've produced, at the moment it's up to 16, but it is fast increasing, mental health scenes that are bespoke to the music industry. So these include anxiety, depression, stress, substance use, suicide prevention, a range of topics, but bespoke to the music industry. So it's not for us just about producing some information about anxiety and just writing the word music industry or musician. It's actually about utilizing the research that is specific to the music industry. So we're really proud of those. So they're available to download from our website. There's PDF versions. If you have a duplex printer, you can actually print it out and actually fold a scene into how it should be. And it's quite neat because they're pocket size, so they can be put in the back pocket if someone from the music industry wishes to take one. They have grounding techniques within them. They have sort of advice, mnemonics as well about how, so if you're struggling, they're quite educational. So it's about sort of that awareness as well. So they're not just about an anxiety scene for someone who's experiencing anxiety, but they're also useful for someone who maybe is supporting someone experiencing anxiety. So really proud of those, really great resources, because as mentioned earlier, it's really difficult to have that bespoke information for the music industry.
Yeah, definitely. And these sort of leaflets you're talking about, I think you give them away, don't you, at conventions? So obviously I met you in person for the first time at the Brighton Music Conference earlier this year, and obviously you had a stall there, and obviously various there's a box, isn't there? I've seen some DJs sort of holding the box, and obviously there's these leaflets and badges and all the rest of it. So tell us about that box then. So what does that box contain that you see DJs sort of holding it up in support for Tonic?
Yeah, so I didn't realize that long ago we launched that box, but it was, wasn't it? That was the first event. So the Tonic Rider box so we're utilizing that mainly in putting them in dressing rooms, putting them backstage at venues, having them accessible to the music industry. And then these boxes are a range of zines. So we usually put around sort of 3 to 5 scenes in there. It has information about the program. It has some fun stuff as well, like stickers and the badges, but it's about giving something to people in their workplace where they can take it away, take it home, take it back to the hotel room, take it back to the tour bus, open the box up, have a look, learn a bit about the program, maybe leading them to then thinking about going on to the program. So we have those boxes and they've really come about. And actually since then, we also now have a digital version. So for some people, it might be a little bit difficult to actually take a box because it's quite visible. And for some people, mental health is still a taboo, and we want to break that, but it's about one step at a time. So the digital box, you scan a QR code that's on the box or on posters that we have, and it takes you to an online version of the box where it's got the zines in digital format. It's got grounding techniques in sort of video format. So on our YouTube page, we've got grounding techniques, the little 1-minute videos that talk you through different techniques that can be used. And then also it gives sort of like emergency information on a program just by scanning the QR code. And this has been really useful because this year, hence the name Tonic Rider, we launched our backstage mental health support work.
Cool. Let's talk about that then.
Yeah.
So how did that come about, and what was the sort of first? I know you've been at festivals recently, so yeah. So how did that come about in the first place, and what was the sort of first festival or event you did?
Yeah, so the name Tonic Rider, originally the idea behind it was to have Tonic, the charity, on your rider. So you'd have us at a festival, at a gig, on tour, to offer support around mental health and just be there as a port of call. Now, obviously, Tonic Rider launching in 2021, there was no gigs, there was no tours, there was no festival.
No, exactly.
So
I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but that was only a few years ago.
It's strange, isn't it?
Seasons ago, yeah.
With how quickly we've gone back, I feel like we've really gone back. Like it would never be like that again, but luckily it has been. So when I come across Tonic, that was what was happening. Is that at that point we were transferring to an online program. Now, amazingly, the online program has become the core bit. So this year, we were able to expand our program to do the backstage support. And previously to that, we have been on tour with the Specials, because Terry Hall is our founding patron. We've been on tour. Dub Pistol's been on tour on Liberties. So we have previously worked at music events. We've run our own music events. We've run the Tonic Festival. And we have provided our Nevermind the Stigma stand at these events, which is the front-facing stand offering information and support to attendees, the music fans. So to expand that, we looked into doing backstage mental health support. And so we finally did that. We did that for the first time this year at Takedown Festival in Portsmouth, which is a one-day rock and metal festival, which was a big success, and a large festival within there. It's an indoor one, but it was large. It was headlined by Skin Dread and Sleep Token. And we were placed in the green room. So the first time we did it, we do it based on, we had our stand, we had our zines, we had a couple of the team there to talk to artists, talk to crew, talk to people working at the festival, about the program. Artists were coming over, taking the zines, having conversations in the place of their work at a time where, you know, they're 2 hours from show time, but it gives them that sort of outlet to say, yeah, at the moment I'm feeling like a little bit nervous, taking, say, our music performance anxiety zine. And then also it was the opportunity, we put our Tonic Rider boxes in the dressing rooms. So for artists that had a dressing room, they were there, and they were across the green room as well. So we did that, and now we've done several festivals this year. So we've done, after that, we did Nibley Festival in Gloucestershire. We then moved on to doing Victoria's Festival, which is the large, I think it's around 60,000 attendees. It is Portsmouth, and that was fantastic. So that time we had the gazebo, so it's more gazebo based. And then we did, a couple weeks ago, we did Mucky Weekender, which is our patron Barry Ashworth's festival. And it allows us that informal conversation. And it's really amazing because you would think that being plonked into, you know, artists and crews' place of work, and also a place of, you know, where there's, you know, fun and good time and seeing your friends, that we wouldn't get a lot of traction, but actually a lot of people come over, they talk to us. It's really great, and that we're on hand. So, you know, if support is needed where something's happening, there's a crisis, we are all on board with our team of mental health professionals.
Do you think in the last few years, because obviously there's discussions like today about mental health, and you know, this show I've been doing, I think maybe about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. Have you noticed that obviously people are a lot more open now to talk about mental health, and that's also why it gives you the opportunity to be at these festivals, which is amazing in the first place, but also for people not to simply disregard it and think like, well, you know, because things are a lot more open now. Do you think that helps the access to the artists and their interest in what you're doing?
I think there's 3 key milestones to where we are now, society-wise. So I think generally the first part is I think, you know, the younger generation now, they just talk about mental health more. That's what they do. Generationally, there's more openness about mental health. There's more openness about feelings and emotions and identity that wasn't present even 10 years ago. I think that's the first thing that, you know, and you notice this with younger artists. And we know younger artists are more, you know, these are artists that are producing Grammy-winning albums in their bedroom. You know, these are artists that are, you know, they're performing on YouTube, and it's a different generation. So naturally that's come. So we've gone from, you know, artists talking about mental health within their music, but they're not outside of it really, to now artists really talk about it in their music, and then also talking about it on panels and in interviews, magazines, going on social media saying I'm not doing this tour because my mental health is struggling. Whereas before there'd be sort of like your standard kind of reasoning where it'd be like due to unforeseen circumstances. So that's the first element. Definitely younger artists, younger people in the music should just generally go, no, I need time out. You're also seeing as well, and I think it's fantastic, you're seeing touring crews, they're bringing yoga mats, they're bringing weights, they're tuning into sort of video. They're thinking more about their health and well-being, which you just didn't get all those years ago. You just didn't get. So that's definitely the first step, definitely.
Yeah. And I guess the other important thing is it's mental health is almost as important, if not more important, than physical health. And obviously you would have first aiders at an event, you know, dealing with the medical side of things, or the physical side of things. So it makes sense to have people there talking about mental health and just making sure, because like on everything, you know, if one person listening to this gets something out of it and it's helped them, you don't know who you're going to come across on that event. And there may be someone who is really struggling, managing to hide it, and then you start a conversation and you could take that person in a different direction. And being there allows that to possibly happen. And that must be quite important as well.
Absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head about first aiders. Absolutely. I mean, first aid's been about, what, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
Absolute years. So, and it's natural that in the workplace, you do your first aid course. It's natural that venue staff, security, you know, first aid course is such a natural part of working life. So we need to do that with mental health first aid. It needs to be like, okay, you do your first aid course, but you also do your mental health first aid, because it's, you know, there's the holistic nature of physical, mental, and social health and how that interacts. It's all linked. So it's very much, without a doubt, needed. I think it's really great that there's an awareness of more people doing mental health first aid. We're certainly getting more interest, which is great, because, you know, we've been doing it for 2 years now. And like you said, you know, on tours, even tours where there's just the band and a manager, so maybe 5, 6 people, it's really important someone has mental health first aid within that.
Yeah. And again, it's the ripple effect, isn't it? So someone sees that at a festival. Okay. They may speak to their mate about it and say, oh, you know what? I was at this festival the other weekend. It's charity called Tonic. They're talking about mental health. And then that person might start a conversation. So again, it's just this rippling out, isn't it? You just don't know how many people it's going to affect. And it's great that you can be there. So I think another one you did was Boomtown. Was that Boomtown as well?
Yeah, so we did Boomtown, but we did it in a slightly different capacity. So we actually provided volunteers for Boomtown Fair. So we weren't there to offer backstage support. So it was, different capacity. But we're hoping next year to be able to do more festivals, more tours, more gigs. Our work around tours, we're looking at sort of expanding how we're going to do that. So that will be announced very soon. But yeah, doing more festivals, and again, it's the mix of festivals, because there's, you know, smaller festivals, larger festivals, but, you know, it's still the music industry. It's a real mix as well. Getting our resources in at festivals, really sort of highlighting just the awareness, not just of Tonic Rider, but mental health in the music industry specifically, because we hear so much feedback where people say, I didn't realize you guys existed. So it's first port of call, first conversation, first kind of, oh yeah.
Definitely. And it's the same with any sort of charity, isn't it? You know, it's, yes, you want to be able to raise funds and have the money, but the awareness is almost more important, because there's no point being, say, really well funded, but no one knowing who you are or what you do, ultimately. So again, that's important. And in light of that, you've talked about a few of them, but you've got quite a number of patrons and ambassadors. So give us an idea of who's involved in that capacity.
Yeah, so we're really lucky because we've got a range of patrons and ambassadors from the music industry. So as I mentioned, Terry Hall was our founding patron from the very beginning of Tonic. So he played at one of the first Tonic festivals. Really, really fantastic patron. Took us on tour, funded elements of our program through album releases. Really, really special guy. Wonderful, just wonderful man. Really thought a lot about the work we did in terms of recovery through music, and then the New Never Mind a Stigma program, and then also the Tonic Rider program, having those conversations. And he was really open, Terry talking about his mental health. He was really talking about his mental health on stage, talking about his mental health in interviews, really open about that. So it was really wonderful. And the Specials family are still part of the Tonic family. Linville Golding is one of our ambassadors. So yeah, we're really lucky to still have them. Barry Ashworth as well is one of our patrons. So like I mentioned, we have Mucky Weekender. We then also, he does a lot of work with Barry's Flying Circus. So that's a fundraiser for the Tonic Rider program around people doing wing walks. So it's like doing wing walks to raise money for the program. That's going on again next May. So we've had Barry do it, we've had Bez from the Happy Mondays do it.
Amazing.
We've had different musicians do that, which has been really amazing. And there's some cracking videos on the website from previous years of Barry's Flying Circus. And Barry's a fantastic patron, really always highlights the work. And also Shawnee T from the Dub Pistols is one of our ambassadors as well. And he also runs Shawnee Tonic FC. So we do a charity football match, again, raising money for the program. And again, we're doing it next year, hopefully larger than we've done previously, which would be really great. And then in terms of other ambassadors as well, we've got Amy Beasting, who's from Oh My God, It's a Church. We've got Millie Manders from Millie Manders and Shut Up. And we also got Biff Mitchell, who runs the Glaze Arena at Glastonbury. He also does work at Mucky Weekender as well. We've got a range of ambassadors. I would run out of time mentioning them all, but they're all from different elements of the industry. And they do some really, really fantastic work.
But again, that's great, because you've talked about how the music industry isn't just the artists at the top or the DJs. You know, you've got the crew, you've got working, you've got venues and all of that. And again, to have people from all aspects of that's going to help. Obviously, we're talking about awareness, and Benny Goggs is saying he didn't know about this. I think about Tonic, and he said definitely needed in the music industry. Can imagine the stresses from all angles, anything from performance to financial anxieties. And that sort of sums up everything, doesn't it? Because, like you say, it's not just about performing; it's about creating. And even if you're not, we talked a little bit earlier about sort of competition. Even if you're not in competition with someone else, you're always competing with yourself, aren't they? You've always think you've got to be better, or I've got to do a better mix, or I've got to do a better album, or the next album is going to be just as successful as the last one. Otherwise, I'm sort of, washed up. So I guess there's a lot of that aspect as well in the music industry.
Right, that's self-doubt. No, not knowing that financial precarity. Where is sort of my next paycheck going to come? Am I going to be able to do an album? The idea of a sophomore album, all these elements, really stressful elements. And, highlighting what I said earlier, that there's very few industries in the arts where you produce work and perform work. That's really difficult, especially when it revolves around your own mental health, where you've got produce this piece of work and then perform it. So it's not just, getting that out there, but then also performing it every day, every night.
Yeah. And I mean, especially singers, I'm sure it's in a similar, but when you say the front of a band, and obviously you've got to sing those songs with the passion and the emotion that they were written in the first place, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
And that is a
absolutely.
real performance, isn't it? You know, it's the same, obviously, playing guitar and drums and all the rest of it. But I think that must be a massive pressure. And you talked a little bit about being sort of in green rooms. So is that the case of, you know, as they're sort of getting ready to go on the show and then do perform and then afterwards? And are you sort of literally backstage at that sort of
Yeah. So we're
situation?
literally backstage, and it depends the setup of what the artists are doing. So, you know, they'll be there a couple of hours before. They may choose to stick around a little bit after as well. Some artists don't. So we're
Yeah.
there for before performance, we're there for after performance, we're there for the crew working at the festival across the whole weekend, which is fantastic. And it's just different points of the day where people come over and talk to us. So it's a really just us being raising awareness, offering information, providing support if needed. It's that kind of that try effort to really support where needed.
Yeah, and Benny's saying social media must play a big part on mental health in the industry. I mean, I think we underestimate how much of a role it plays in general. That's the thing. And I think, you know, in day-to-day life, it's quite pressurized. But I think as soon as you add in music or performance or, you know, what's my next reel going to be? How many views am I going to have? All of this stuff. And there's also an element of performing to the camera and not showing that you might be struggling.
Mm-hmm. It's that kind of front stage, backstage, isn't it? So it's the identity. You're kind of, are you playing an identity? Are you playing characters? Sometimes people do, sometimes are more raw and it's more personal to them. So it's that element, and it's kind of like acting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, it varies. It really does vary. Like we mentioned before the show started about, you know, and I should be research. I spoke to Finley from AFM earlier today, and he said about artists that use masks, DJs that use masks, producers that use masks, and you know the effect that has on identity, the effect that has on performance anxiety. So it's a really valid point. I mean, so for some artists, there is a lack of kind of they can go about in public more. There's a bit more identity play. For other artists, it's more raw. For some artists, they're maybe they're in a band, but they're not the focal point of the band. So it's a real difference, and it's about, you know, that stage. Performance anxiety comes in many ways. It comes, you know, being on the front of the stage. It comes on being on the desk, the sound desk. It comes from performing in the studio. It comes on performing on radio or TV. It's not just what we think is performance anxiety, but there's different elements of performance anxiety.
Yeah. And it's been an interesting sort of journey for us on what we do in terms of DJing on Twitch, because a lot of us DJed before, and we've talked a lot about anxiety and sort of hiding behind the decks and social anxiety and not wanting to sort of talk to people, to the stage where we're now putting ourselves in front of a camera, quite vulnerable. But again, like you say, it's almost you're not quite playing a character, but it's a slightly different version of yourself that's in front of the camera. And again, there's a lot of pressure with that, I think, and we find it a lot with streaming. You know, there's pressure to sort of keep streaming and keep producing and keep doing stuff. So there is an element of that as well. And yeah, it's quite difficult not to have that if you're a creator or a performer.
And also how quick that can occur. So 1 minute you're playing in your bedroom, the next you're playing on stage, the next you're on telly.
Yeah.
How quick, you know, and for some artists that can come literally overnight. Now with TikTok and with Twitch, you know, it doesn't take long for someone to suddenly achieve fame, and then you're suddenly famous. You're, you know, people start knowing about you. You're having to play on social media all the time. You're having to do this identity performance. So yeah, it's, you know, the idea of fame, and like I said, tying in identity. So being a musician, working in the music industry, how it's tied into your identity is probably the strongest point about what we do in terms of mental health in the music industry. I don't think there's many artists where it's not tied to identity. There's a reason that you're producing music. There's a reason you're performing music. There's a reason you gravitate to this industry. That identity is really important. So when, you know, for those musicians where they lose a record deal, or they don't get a record deal, or they don't get the gig, or they don't get on the festival circuit, we have to understand why that's so significant, because it's part of identity. It's very, you build yourself up to be, I am, so and so, and this is the music I perform, and I resonate with this culture, and I resonate with these people and these audiences. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult when that doesn't happen. And it's like the 1% that achieve the level they want to achieve. For the rest, that's why there's a lot of difficulties in terms of mental health.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to a point from that in a minute. Something I watched earlier on Instagram, but Benny's got a question. And so Benny Goggs has a daughter who's called Indie Mix. She's one of our 45 kids who DJs. My daughter's 9 and she DJs. And then we're doing this little festival in Worthing. And he says his daughter's going to go through this on Saturday for the small festival we're doing. Any top tips to help manage it? Now, I think he's talking about the anxiety, because I know my daughter's not too bad. There's the odd occasion where she's been a bit anxious about DJing, but most of the time she's okay. But I think she gets a bit anxious about it, even though it's that. So, we've talked about anxiety, and obviously you talked about it in the music industry. I assume some of those tips can follow right down to children, so yeah, what sort of what tips would you have for dealing with any anxiety? Or what
yes, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So I think it's always about finding things that helps you in the moment, for helps you keep calm, and that, again, there's a lot of differences here, because for some people, when you're about to go on stage, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of light, or it can be quite dark. There's a lot of sensory input going on, so it's really difficult in a moment to be able to kind of talk yourself through it, get through it, take your time with it. So it's always about finding out what do you want, why are you doing this? Because you love performing. So that's the most important thing. Understanding, accepting that mistakes can and do happen, because I think we're musicians, the perfectionism, but things go wrong, and sometimes things that we think go wrong, other people don't notice. Fans don't notice. The audience don't notice. It's like a millisecond. But as musicians, you go, "Oh no, I've hit that wrong note."
It's the same with a mix. Yeah,
absolutely.
You make a mix and you think, "Oh, that went really badly,but no one else really.
No one notices. No one notices. Oh, it's the best performance ever. So then it's like you get the question and the doubt, and it's just about enjoying it, trying to enjoy it as much as you can, because I think sometimes you can worry about something so much that then it's gone and you didn't enjoy it. So and it will come with time, come with age, because but then it does come with age. But even the most experienced musicians experience music performance anxiety. It happens. They still have those notes. I remember Paul McCartney said, I'm trying to think where I saw this, it must have been in a book, but I saw this where he said if he's playing to a stadium audience, he doesn't get nervous.
Right.
If he's playing to a small audience, and I think I know who said this now. So Jeff from the 100 Club, so Jeff Norton, he's one of our ambassadors. I remember exactly where this is from. So Jeff said that when Paul McCartney played the 100 Club a few years back, he said about when he plays stadiums, he doesn't get nervous, but when he plays small venues like the 100 Club, he gets nervous. He gets performance anxiety. And Jeff asked him why. And he said, because I can look into the eyes of the people I'm playing to.
Okay.
Which I thought that really resonated with me. I thought that's a really interesting point, because Paul McCartney, you are talking about the Beatles, you were talking about Sir Paul McCartney, you're talking about someone that he can make as many mistakes and it still be brilliant. Do you know what I mean? He's Paul McCartney. But how interesting, because I always think that is something that young artists should take on board as well, is that you can be, Paul McCartney's in his 80s now, done thousands of gigs, thousands of festivals, all those record sales, and he still gets nervous. So it's a sign. It's a sign. Some musicians don't get nervous, they don't get anxiety. That's brilliant. That's really great. But for those that do, it's just finding what works for you. And that's why we've made the grounding technique videos, because sometimes these grounding techniques can just help you in that minute to go, okay, this is what I can do.
Well, give us a little bit of a sample of, the grounding technique. Give us a technique or two.
Yeah.
What you would say for grounding.
So interestingly, it's not my voice on the videos because I don't think it's very soothing. But some of the ideas, so there's the idea of sensing different things. So it might be in your head, okay, name 5 things you can see, name 4 things you can smell, name 3 things you can touch, that kind of thing. Sort of grounding yourself in the moment. You've got the square breathing, where it's about counting in terms of your breathing. Sort of playing these sort of games, these sort of techniques in your head, sort of distract you and sort of ground you in a moment to think in that moment in time. That's why I'm quite a fan of the spotting 5 things and hearing 4 things and stuff like that, because I think that's really important. Because I think in times of panic, where yes, there is a lot of sensory input and it can seem like suddenly everything's coming around you, is about opening that up and going, okay, this is what I can see and this is what I can sense. So I think that's a really good thing. And the great thing about the YouTube videos is that they literally are 1 minute. They talk you through it and you can play them again and again and again, so that they're accessible in that moment, not just in zines, but in a video audio output, which is really great.
And again, that's quite interesting what you're saying, because they're like 1 minute little bite-sized chunks, because of the world we live in now, aren't we? Everyone's looking at reels, everyone's on TikTok and all the rest of it. And in order to sort of cut through the noise and sort of give them the information they need, it has to be in a format that they can easily, accessibly access. So again, that's very important. But no, that's really interesting. Yeah. And I think that'd be quite cool, actually. Maybe we'll try it on Saturday, because if our girls are getting a bit anxious about that, it would be great to say to them, right, what 5 things can you see? What can you say? That's a great bit of advice. That's really good.
They're really universal, and I think it's and we're always interested here as well, learning what actually artists do themselves, because there's a range of techniques, isn't there? Really range of techniques. And like I said, it's the younger generation now, they're more health conscious, they're more mental health aware. So there's all different techniques that can be utilized.
If people want to get involved, how can they? Obviously, you've explained that they can do courses. You've explained in terms of sort of festivals like Boomtown, they could volunteer their time, which means that Tonic gets some money, doesn't it, from the festival for supplying stewards. So if people wanted to get involved, how would they do that?
So first and foremost, to go onto the program, to take part in the training courses, in the peer support groups, on our website, tonicmusic.co.uk/tonic-rider, there's a button for our registration form. It's one registration form for all the courses and groups. So you can complete that, go through, complete it. A member of the team then gets in contact, because then you have a consultation appointment, which is free to attend. It's a free appointment. And then eventually that leads into booking. For volunteering,
I'm just going to pause you there, because obviously that's how I got involved. And it was great to have that sort of initial call, and initial chat. Basically, I'd signed up for something, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Yeah, it's a mental health course, the suicide first aid, and it was important, I think, that we had that conversation, because obviously I got to know a bit more about what Tonic was offering and what was there. But I guess the other important thing was to check that I was in a position where I could access the course, and also check my mental health to an extent. So again, that's important, isn't it, to sort of have that call initially?
It takes people by surprise, because we are very much don't want to go down the Eventbrite route of, okay, we run everything and you just book yourself on, because it's really important to understand the mental health of participants, to give them the opportunity to have that open space to talk about their mental health, what's going on. Because for some people, suicide first aid light is a good example. Some people who are recently bereaved through suicide, one of their first kind of things they think of is, I'm going to go and do suicide first aid light training, or do some training, like you said earlier, about, what could I have done differently? What were the signs? Should I have spotted this? And it's never like that. It's never about what you could have done differently, because the training doesn't teach you to spot every single instance of when someone is feeling suicidal. It's really difficult for someone to have those conversations. So when they're not having those conversations, when it's really hidden, that's really difficult. So we have that call because in some cases people, like I said, are recently bereaved through suicide. So we go, okay, we won't book you on yet, but we'll look into doing it later. Have check-ins with those participants, because this is what we're here to do, is to make sure we're offering that support and making sure it's the right time to attend a peer support group, because we're on the program. We do have very limited spaces for counselling and psychotherapy for the music industry. So we do offer that. So in some cases, a participant might not be ready to go on to the peer support group, but one-to-one support, even if it's more sort of informal one-to-one support, more of a mentoring that we can offer over 6 weeks, then in preparation for the peer support group, we then also do that. And that's really important because, like I said, Tonic Rider, it's not about us generating as many, more and more participants, getting more and more participants on the program in what could be an unsafe manner. It's about what support, what training can we offer to every single person in the music industry who registers with us. And in some cases, if we're not the service, we're not the right service at this time, then ensuring we can either signpost or make referrals to services that are more suitable in that moment.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, really important. Okay, so that was getting involved in terms of the program. How else can people get involved?
Yes, so on the website, there's about our fundraising opportunity. So Barry's Flying Circus, Shawnee Tonic FC, Great South Run we've done. So we've got all runners with that. We've got a range of fundraising events. They've really expanded in the last few months. So there's contact details on the website about if you want to volunteer, how you can get involved, if you want to even fundraise, running your own event. So we are doing Gig and Tonic, which is a new initiative where artists, DJs run their own event in aid of Tonic. And we provide sort of the assets, the materials, the Tonic branded materials for them to do that. And then also in terms of volunteering as well, there's information on the website about emailing us for any volunteering roles when we do festival work. So there's volunteering when we run for volunteers doing the campsites, but also as well on the stands and other things as well. There's opportunities there because as we're expanding, we're a national program. We're based remotely. We don't have an office, but being national means that we need more people in different areas. So we're expanding that. There's less information at the moment as we're expanding it, but there will be opportunities arise.
Definitely. And I think all of that is really interesting. And is there an aspect of it that you hope at some stage in the future that Tonic will be at pretty much every festival or every sort of live event? That's going to be the aim, hasn't it? Because, or some sort of form or some sort of representative or something. I assume that's where ideally it will get to.
I mean, let's aim big, let's do international, but in all seriousness, in terms of nationwide, we'd certainly want all our information at festivals, all venues as well. So all venues, all recording studios, we have posters, we have, information with the QR code. So we want that at all festivals, and then as many sort of the stands and support we can offer at these events, because that's what we're here for, because it's really important, because we need to get awareness of the program out there, awareness of mental health. So yeah, and that is the big aim. That is as we're expanding. So we've had a big year this year expanding. Next year we expand even further. We have got funding for the program to do that. So that is the aim, is to be to be able to support the music industry from the local, national, and international level, to do it across the board. So in grassroots venues, in theatres, in arenas, in stadiums, to be able to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, we might come to a few points in a minute, but one of the things that we always do in this show, and I was explaining to you at the beginning, was it was a question from the very first show. We've talked a little bit on the outskirts of music, but in terms of your personal preferences, I asked you to choose 3 records or 3 singles of music that lifts your spirits. So being a big music fan from the beginning, like you explained, and that's what drew you in, it's always difficult to narrow it down to 3, but what would you choose? What sort of music would lift your spirits?
For me, one of the albums that really lifts my spirits, and it's kind of like my study album, so it kind of works like that. I would pick Jamie XX in Colour from
Okay, yeah.
start to finish. I don't think there's a single on there where I'm like, yeah, that single definitely. It's just from start to finish, it gets me through. So that'd be the first one, certainly uplifting. The second one, which is really not an uplifting album when I think about it, is Burial Untrue. So it's quite a doomy, dark kind of record, quite atmospheric.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's like from start to finish, there's a real piece of work. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. It's an amazing piece of work.
Oh, it's an amazing album.
And I feel like it's quite a special album because it's like, it's got this. Everyone seems to know about it, right? But without kind of it ever getting mainstream. It's really strange. I don't know if it's just how Burial goes about how it is. It's amazing, really. So that'd be number 2. And then number 3, which is going to be slightly controversial because of the nature of how it was released. But to me, I think it's the greatest album of all time, I think, for me. And that's J. Paul. He did the album Bait Ones.
Okay, it's not what I know.
Was it's an amazing album, and it's a really sad story because it's it come out in it was meant to come out in 2013, I think it was, maybe even I think it was 2013, and it was leaked.
Right.
And from that, J. Paul then didn't release it, and then he did release it, and he only performed his first live show this year at Coachella. But that album is extraordinary, and I think there was a physical version come out this year.
Right.
And so it's Bait Ones, what it was called originally, and he is a phenomenal talent, and it's such a shame what happened with that album being leaked. But for me, it's like, wow, what an album! And I'd love to see him live. He did perform this year in London. Getting tickets was just like getting gold dust. I mean,
yeah.
So, but yeah, I recommend that J. Paul Bait Ones. I just think it's one of them. What a talent! You're talking Prince level talent, in my opinion. Just the way it's just produced, the way it's put together, the way vocally as well.
Yeah, amazing. Well, yeah, I don't know the last one, so I think
I recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. I remember reading an article about an artist playing Coachella, and I think it was the first gig. But yeah, so yeah, we'll definitely check it out. Cool. We'll come back to Tonic in a minute because I don't know if there's anything else you want to tell us about that we haven't sort of covered. The other thing we do a lot on this show is called Confectionery Corner, and it started off. We had a bit of a debate a little while ago with an Australian who said that Violet Crumble, which is chocolate around honeycomb, was better than Crunchy in the UK.
Okay.
So anyway, but yeah, so I normally ask my guests if there's any sort of retro sweets or chocolates that they particularly like. So you've told me already, I think, but what did you come up with and why?
I will admit, though, a Tim Tam is better than a penguin, though. I think the Australians are right there, aren't they? I've not tried this. What was it called? A purple?
It's a Violet Crumble.
I've never heard of that
and
one.
It's basically chocolate around, and they sold it over here in I think it was B&M Home, and you could try it. And basically, the honeycomb's better on the Crunchy, but the chocolate's better on the Violet Crumble. So if you combine the two, you'd had the best one. But yeah.
I would say for me, the underrated one. Special mention to a gold, the Whisper Gold, and the reason I say that is because my colleague Robbie recently introduced that to me. He was like, "You ever had a Whisper Gold?" I was like, "Nah." I got to admit, he's got good style. So shout out to Robbie there. But for me, I think the underrated ones, because I think people always go. Some people like the old posh ones like Lindor and that, don't they? And the classic dairy milk. I mean, if you could get an original dairy milk, like how it used to be made, I mean, that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? But for me, it's a Tunic's caramel bar.
Yeah.
I think that is one underrated confectionery. And it's one of them where, for me, it always felt like it was in my nan's cupboard. I kind of felt like it was one of them things you'd be like, oh, yeah, wow, this is one of them. Well, you go to a friend's house and, like, the parent would be like, oh, here you go, you don't want one of these. And it's like, oh, wow, why do I never have these?
It's like that. We were talking before about Lidl make like a slightly cheaper version. And my mum, who lives a few doors down, has always got them. So whenever my daughter pops around, she always comes back with 2 of these, one for her.
There we go.
daughter.
There we go. Yeah.
So I you know, I love them. Yeah, they are
And
great.
and they're strange because I think with a lot of tonics things, there's something about them that's like, it's very, very odd, isn't it? But it's, yeah, no, tonics I think, yeah, I just think it's one of them underrated things. I just think people don't normally mention it, and it sounds really strange. And it's just one of them where it feels quite original. I don't think it's changed much.
No,
I think it still has a texture of cardboard in a way. It's got that cardboardy texture, because I feel like that with the old what do you call them? Yeah, like the old tea. Is it the tea? The other marshmallow things where you just think, in a way, this tastes kind of strange, and it feels like I could use this to like fill my wall, but at the same time, there's something quite.
That's made by tonics as well, isn't it? They
make yeah. There's something about tonics where I'm not sure what's going on there, but shout out to them. I mean,
definitely. Let's get some more. Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it's been brilliant. Is there anything that you want to talk about tonic that we haven't sort of covered? I think we've covered most of the things. But yeah, if there's anything else on
I would say with tonic is definitely check out the website. Definitely check out the program. Check out the resources we offer. Check out our blog. We've got a blog page with announcements of stuff we do. And I always say this, I encourage anyone from the music industry to register, because whether it's training or support, whether you're on the spectrum of good mental health or poor mental health, there is something for everyone. It's worth checking us out because it's bespoke. It's bespoke to the music industry. It's informed by mental health professionals from the music industry.
Brilliant. I'm just going to set the raid. So I know you're not on Twitch, but the raid is, I've spelt it wrong. Hold on. There you go. Right. So basically, we're going to take people who've been watching the show, and we're going to take them to another channel. There's a guy called De Bourbon who plays drum and bass and some reggae and stuff like that. So, Jeordie, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's an interesting one because we had that initial call online, then I did the courses, then we met in person, and now we've gone back to online. But I'm hopeful that we'll meet again at some point at some festival. But also thank you to Damon for tuning in, and Benny Goggs, and we had ADP and Colt Van Boom, and a few other people. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Awesome.
This will be available on YouTube if you want to watch it back. It'll be available on Mixcloud. But you know, if you hang on there for a minute, we'll have a quick chat afterwards. But thank you once again, and people should definitely check out Tonic, and I'd highly recommend the courses because I learned a lot from doing them, and I'm definitely glad I did. So yeah,
thank you so much.
Thanks so much.